Hey, it's Mark Washington, MTC Media here. So, in our latest episode of Three to Make Two, we're going to kind of concentrate on the finals, but go past the finals a little bit. And this is about the broadcast booth. So much is being made that there's not going to be a strong uh, broadcast booth for the NBA finals. Breen, Burke, and Jefferson aren't necessarily turning heads. It's not Van Gundy and Jackson and Breen the way it was 2 or 3 years ago before ESPN obviously wanted to do some budget cuts, and so that ended Van Gundy and it ended Jackson and stuff. And I will say this, and we'll get into the inside the NBA stuff too. When this new broadcast deal comes up, and there's so many carriers now for the NBA, which is what they wanted, it's a reminder that the league wants network partners. Let's say that again. The league wants network partners. Sort of what happens with the NFL. They're partners. People get upset, and I'm stressing this because people get upset because they're like, oh, well, this person or that person is a shill for the league. They're not being objective. They're not being this and this, that. No, they're partners. They're not going to badmouth the product. That's not what they're there for. Those years are done, and that's because look at rights fees. Look how much people are charging for right fees, and then you have to get the advertiser for these right fees to pay for it. You're not going to invest in something and then spend 24 hours a day bad mouthing what you invest in. It just doesn't make sense. And that comes back to the inside the NBA on a couple of levels. One, ESPN said, or at least it's being reported, that they're going to do that show the way they did Pat McAfee's show and not mess with it and let it be what it is. ESPN, especially when it comes to basketball, sometimes can't help itself. I'm hoping that they're staying true to their word because I don't want to turn it on. I don't want to see Stephen A. Smith on there. I don't want to see Michael Wilbon trying to somehow, some way, shoe in a Michael Jordan story or a Kobe story. I don't want to see that. The other thing I don't want to see is the other network partners try to be inside the NBA. Inside the NBA for the league is not always good. The one thing, no matter whether you like them or not, the problem I have with Kenny, Charles, and Shaq is this. I think no one does this better than hockey. If you watch the national broadcast on hockey, they are very good at being blatantly honest about what's going on the ice, individually, good, bad, some stuff with the league. But they never disrespect the league. They are truly being objective in their observation while not tearing down the product. Charles, Kenny, and Shaq, that's not what they do. They constantly tear down the product. And that's not good for business. And going into now that they have all these network partners, and this is almost like a reset for the league. You got a ton of relatively new ownership groups. And as you can see by the last CBA, as you can see by what their vision of the league should look like from a governor's point of view, they are not like your governors. They're certainly not like the ownership groups, because I grew up in an era where the ownership groups were families, and they're not like that. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings by the OGs and the unks about today's NBA. You keep talking about the players. It's not the players. The NBA governors, ownership groups do not want the product to look like it looked then. They don't want to manage the product the way it was managed then. So this idea that, well, look at when the league was this and when the league was that league is never going to exist anymore. So we got to get out of that. So those new governor ownership groups are going to look more from a traditional media partnership that you see in the NFL, that you see in the NHL. So they're not going to want a whole bunch of inside the NBAs. And I know that's going to disappoint people. But this is the network broadcast media side of it. The NBA is going to embark on a new era from that side of it. in part because of the governors and the ownership groups, but also the commissioner. He understands very, very, he understands that they cannot screw this up. He understands that this is to build expansion. This is to build NBA FIBA league over in Europe. This is to build a lot of things. So this is a great chance for the league, from the commissioner, from the governor's ownership groups, to reset the table for a generation that doesn't necessarily, wasn't around for the 2000s, early 2000s, and the 90s and the 80s, and for me, all the way back to the 70s. They weren't around for that. So they don't remember what the league looked like then. They are looking at the league from now, and I think there's going to be a big push to start setting the table of what this league is going to be for those consumers. And it's the perfect time for them. If you're looking at it from their perspective, it's the perfect time to do it. And I can't blame them for it. It's Mark Swanson, MTC Media.